In this video, we'll be looking at G100 Access, specifically G100 Interface Options. For Local KVM, we'll start with the Local HMI Task Functions, Screen Layout, and Virtual Keyboard, MCP Local Configuration Utility, MCP Settings GUI, and lastly for Local KVM, the Local MCP Runtime HMI. For Ethernet, we'll look at the MCP Local Configuration Utility via SSH, the MCP Settings GUI via HTTPS, Remote MCP Runtime HMI via HTTPS, and the MCP Runtime HMI via the remote desktop. Lastly, we'll cover the serial maintenance port for the MCP Local Configuration Utility. With that said, let's jump in. Once the G100 unit is powered up, several interface options are available for connecting to the device. This includes the Local KVM, where a keyboard, mouse, and monitor can be connected directly to the unit. Connect the display port to a monitor with a display cable. Connect a keyboard and mouse to any of the USB Type-A ports. Support access, MCP Local Configuration Utility, MCP Settings GUI, Local Runtime HMI. Ethernet interfaces, G100 provides 4 independent Ethernet ports. Ethernet port 1 is, port number 1 is 10.100.1000 base T. RJ45 copper port. Default IP address is 192.168.168.81. Ethernet port number 2, 3, and 4. Port number 2 is 10.100.1000 base T. RJ45 copper port. Port number 3 and 4 are SFP ports that support multiple 100 base and 1000 base options. You must be in the internal zone to access the G100. Support access, MCP Local Configuration Utility, MCP Settings GUI, Remote Runtime HMI, MCP Runtime HMI via the remote desktop. Default serial maintenance. Default serial maintenance port where the user can connect to the device via RJ45 serial console cable. Serial port number 4 in RS-232 mode with a baud rate of 115.200. And support access, MCP Local Configuration Utility. The Local HMI provides access to the G100 through a local substation computer setup via KVM or keyboard, video, and mouse. The taskbar shown on Local HMI on the bottom of the screen provides the following functions: access to start applications, minimize all windows and show desktop, switch between active windows and workspaces, launch a terminal session to the MCP shell, launch the MCP system, launch the MCP System Settings GUI, which you should have only one instance across all workspaces. Launch the MCP Emergency Access, which also should have only one instance across all workspaces. Launch Local Runtime HMI, also supports only one instance across all workspaces. Network interface 0 statistics, memory statistics, CPU statistics, local time clock. Additional information will be shown when hovering the mouse over the statistics and time clock. The color theme can be changed using Start, Settings, Themes. The Local HMI and all applications running can be restarted using Start, Logout selections. Screen layout and resolutions may be configured using the Screen Layout Utility. Utility can be launched from the Local HMI Start menu using Start, System, Screen Layout. The minimum resolution supported in Local HMI is 1280 by 1024, and the recommended resolution is FHD 1920 by 1024 or higher. The G100 supports a single monitor only. When a single monitor is connected, the connected monitor becomes the primary. The configured resolution will always be persisted once the Screen Layout Utility is closed. A virtual keyboard may be displayed on the screen using a Start System Onboard. Clicking on the top right X will close the virtual keyboard. The MCP Gateway Local Configuration Utility is used to configure system-level settings on the G100. This interface is the shell-based equivalent of the MCP Settings GUI. Only one instance is allowed to run at any given time across both the mcpcfg and the MCP Settings GUI. Once the G100 is powered up and has a valid license installed, click on the G100 name via the taskbar, then click Terminal. A default terminal application will be opened showing the login screen. It's a shell-based command line interface, and the user can log in using administrator credentials and then type sudo mcpcfg and the user password when prompted. A gateway settings menu will be shown, and then you can proceed with the settings. Please see the G100 Settings module for more details on system-level settings. The MCP Settings GUI is used to configure system-level settings on the G100. This interface is a web-based equivalent of the MCP Local Configuration Utility. The functionality is identical when the system is configured via the MCP Settings GUI or MCP Local Configuration Utility. The only difference is that the MCP Settings GUI is a web-based interface. Again, only one instance is allowed to run at any given time across both the MCP CFG and the MCP Settings GUI. Once the G100 device is powered up and has a valid license installed, click on the G100 name via the taskbar, then click System Settings. A default web browser will be opened, showing the MCP Settings login screen. Log in using administrator credentials, and then you can proceed with the settings. Please see the G100 Settings module for more details on system-level settings. The Local Runtime HMI will be started automatically once the G100 is powered up and has a valid license installed. Alternatively, the Local Runtime HMI can be launched by clicking on the G100 name via the taskbar and then click Application G100 HMI. The Local Runtime HMI access is protected by a login screen that requires a username and password. The user login level role determines which Local Runtime HMI features and functions the user can have access to support. If configured without a login, then the Local Runtime HMI will be launched automatically with the G100 homepage and the configured user privileges. The Local Runtime HMI provides the same functions for local display and control as the Remote Runtime HMI, with a few exceptions. Multiple users can use the MCP Runtime HMI simultaneously, using any of the local remote desktop concurrently. The number of concurrent users is configurable under System-Wide Access Manager, Max Simultaneous Observers, Operators, Supervisors in the DSAS MCP Studio Configuration tool. You can configure the settings of the monitor connected to the DisplayPort of the G100 and enable or disable the feature of the Standby HMI redirect to active through the Local HMI menu of the MCP CFG Utility or MCP Settings GUI. If the Standby HMI redirects to the active G100, when redundancy is enabled, both the Local HMI monitors connected to each G100 unit points to the active MCP only. The Local HMI power bar on each G100 indicates whether Local HMI is showing information for this G100 or the peer G100. Please see the G500 Settings module for more details on Local HMI settings, and see the G500 G100 Runtime HMI module for the auto login and the HMI functionalities and features. The MCP Gateway Local Configuration Utility can be launched remotely via SSH. The PC and the G100 shall be in the same subnet to establish a network connection. Launch a terminal application such as the Secure Terminal Emulator from the DSAgile folder in the Start menu to start a terminal session with SSH as protocol type with port number 22. Log in using administrator credentials and then type sudo mcpcfg and the user password when prompted. A gateway settings menu will be shown, and then you can proceed with the settings. Please see the G100 Settings module for more details on the system level settings. The MCP Settings GUI can be launched remotely via HTTPS. The PC and the G100 shall be in the same subnet to establish a network connection. Use a supported web browser like Internet Explorer, Microsoft Edge, Mozilla Firefox, and Google Chrome. Display proxy and enter the G100's IP address with port number 8081 into the address bar. The user is required to confirm the security certificate exception. The MCP Settings login screen is then displayed. Log in using the administrator credentials, and then you can proceed with the settings. Again, only one instance is allowed to run at any given time between the MCP CFG and the MCP Settings GUI. Please see the G100 Settings module for more details on the system level settings. The Remote Runtime HMI provides access to the G100 from a remote computer setup. It requires a Windows 64-bit OS and the installation of the setup file. This is available via the GE Grid Solutions website and consists of a single installation file named setup MCP HMI _x64_vabc.exe, and ABC represents the version. This must match the MCP firmware version of the first two digits. The Remote MCP Runtime HMI runs as a standalone application. Once launched, the login mode is always secure HTTPS and the default port number is 443. The PC and the G100 shall be in the same subnet to establish a network connection. The user login level role determines which MCP HMI features and functions the user can have access to support. By customizing the MCP Runtime HMI shortcut, the user can predetermine a login user IP address or remote port. When the remote HMI auto login is enabled, the configured user screen is launched automatically with the configured user and privilege level. After successful login, the MCP Runtime HMI shows either G100 or G500 automatically by detecting the connected device type. Please see the G500 G100 Runtime HMI module for the auto login and the HMI functionalities and features. Starting with the MCP version 3.00, it's possible to connect to a separate instance of the local HMI using remote desktop, here named RD, from a Windows PC, minimum Windows 10. Remote desktop access should be used only for temporary activities performed from Windows computers when the remote runtime HMI is not available and should not be a permanent replacement for the remote runtime HMI. RD sessions use the Windows Remote Desktop Connection application. Except for the screen, mouse, and keyboard, there are no additional resources shared over the Windows Remote Desktop. RD access requires a remote desktop MCP license and a separate RD HMI application. The RD HMI application can be obtained as a signed Docker container file from GE repositories or using the DSAS updates workflow and has the file name MCP RD HMI, followed by the compatible firmware version, for example, MCP RD HMI-300.2515-0.0. The MCP RD HMI application is installed in the G100 device using a PETC-based workflow. The MCP RD functionality is provided by a separate Docker container, which eliminates all possible interactions and crosstalk cross-actions between the KVM local HMI and the RD sessions. While inside an active RD session, menus, layout, taskbar, runtime HMI auto login, user actions, and results are the same as the user would see in front of the G100 device's KVM local HMI, with some exceptions. Please keep in mind the RD session with the HMI application runs in the target device, not in a Windows PC like the remote runtime HMI. Therefore, the user experience relative to performance depends on the target device resources and loading. Please see the G500 G100 Runtime HMI via Remote Desktop Module for detailed setup procedures. The MCP Gateway Local Configuration Utility can be launched locally via the serial maintenance port. The default serial maintenance port is enabled, set as a serial port number 4, and configured as RS-232 at 115/200 BPS. The serial maintenance port can be disabled via UEFI settings. If the serial maintenance port is disabled, users can still access the device using either the local KVM or Ethernet ports. If the serial maintenance port was disabled and the IP addresses are not known, then access can be done using the local KVM. Launch a terminal application such as Secure Terminal Emulator from the DS Agile Studio folder in the Start menu. Then select the file, connect, and ensure the protocol is set to the serial port. Select the PC serial port for the connection to the G100 with the baud rate set at 115/200 and then connect. Log in with administrator credentials at the G100 command shell prompt. After login, type sudo mcpcfg and the user password when prompted, and then proceed with the settings. Please see the G100 settings module for more details on the system level settings. Lastly, I want to thank you for watching this training content video. And if you're looking for more great content, take a minute and check out the Resources Hub on the GE website. You can do that by typing resources.gegridsolutions.com into your browser, or just click the link in the description of this video and it'll take you right there. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.